So right now we're going to a town called Peterhead in the northeast of Scotland. And Peterhead is a significant town for me because it's where my entire family comes from. Basically my parents, my grandparents, aunts, uncles, great aunts and uncles, everyone came from this town. And I never lived here personally, but we used to come up here quite a lot to visit. And I remember one summer in particular when I was around 10 years old, we came up here and my cousin said I should bring my swimming staff with me because if I did, then we could go to the local pool. So that's exactly what I did, and that's where we're heading right now. I remember when I first arrived, I turned and saw these diving boards and instantly I was captivated by them. And I asked my cousin if he'd ever been off of the top one, and he said that he hadn't, but that he'd always wanted to. And from that moment, we instantly knew what had to happen here that day. We had to jump off the top diving board. We had to conquer it. There was just nothing else for it. So I remember we went off the lower ones first, and then that gave us the confidence to try the next ones up. And then eventually, it was time to go to the very top. So I got up here and I remember that it could have been like standing on top of the Empire State Building. I just couldn't believe how high this thing was. It didn't look that high from down there, but as soon as I got up here and looked over the edge, my legs turned to jelly and I just didn't want to do it. In fact, I started berating myself internally, like, how have you managed to get yourself into this situation? What are you doing up here? This is nuts. This is crazy. I mean, why'd you have to mention the boards? You didn't have to mention the boards. Why did you mention the boards? Why did you come up here? You could have had a nice day down there in the pool. This is nuts. You're definitely going to die now. I just couldn't believe it. It just seemed like an impossibly dangerous task to actually jump off this thing. So I turned back to my cousin and said, well, it's your local pool. You should probably go first. And then he said to me, no, you're older. You should go first. So we had a big discussion about who should go first. It turned into a conference. And then that kind of merged into a conference about what techniques and methods we should use. Should we do a running jump, or should we perch ourselves on the edge and just flop over the side? Should we have our feet like this or pointing down? Should we open our eyes, close our eyes? And there was a comfort and security in that, because the more that we could talk about it and discuss it, the longer it meant we could delay actually having to do it. The more that we could talk and discuss and find different angles, the longer it meant we didn't have to jump. So actually, I'm embarrassed to say that we actually spent the entire session standing up here. I mean, I can't remember how long it was exactly, but literally the entire session standing in this spot. And we were getting more and more frustrated and annoyed with ourselves all the while. And what made it worse was that all these little 5-year-old kids were coming up these stairs here and going to the edge and flopping over like it was nothing. And we're looking at each other thinking, that kid was like 5 years old. How is he able to do it and we're not? He was like half our size. And we're looking down, and this little kid is like paddling around in the water like it's absolutely nothing. And we're thinking, how's he managed to do that? And so we're getting more and more frustrated and angry with ourselves and annoyed, and we just want to do it, but we can't quite build up the courage to conquer our fears. And so I'd like walk to the edge of the board all full of purpose and full of confidence. Okay, I'm definitely doing this now, I've got this. And then I'd reach the edge of the board and I'd look down and my legs would turn to jelly again and my confidence would dissipate and I would have to turn back defeated. And this went on again and again, over and over and over. And then eventually it reached a climax when our parents arrived in the viewing gallery over there and they started shouting over, and at first it was just like joking, saying, come on, do it. Just, you know, make the jump. And then eventually it reached a point where they were saying, actually it's time to go. I mean, the pool is actually closing now and we need to get on the road and go home. So you're going to have to do this now. You're going to have to jump. And And so eventually I reached a point where I was so embarrassed and just so frustrated and annoyed that I decided it was more painful to stand here a moment longer than it ever could be to jump. No matter how painful it would be to jump in that water, it couldn't be any more painful than the embarrassment and the frustration of actually standing up here. And so eventually I decided that I was going to jump. As soon as I jumped in, absolutely loved it. My cousin jumped in right after me, and we both couldn't wait to do it again. In the previous Kindling, we talked about taking leaps of faith by small increments, always going a step beyond where we're comfortable. And that's what we did with these diving boards. We started off in the lower one, and that gave us confidence to try the next one up, and then that gave us the confidence to eventually attempt the very top. There was an element of fear at every stage, but we built up our confidence by doing it in these small increments. And Jesus does the same with us. He will tend to build your faith slowly. He will keep laying slightly bigger leaps in front of you. If you keep on jumping, then everything will turn out fine. But if you balk at a jump at any stage, if you say no, and if you let fear hold you back, then a kind of spiritual inertia will set in, and you'll become bored, restless, and frustrated in your walk of faith. Exactly like me and my cousin on the top board there. Fear always says, stay safe, put up barriers, stop, hide, protect yourself. Faith, on the other hand, always says, jump, leap, risk, try, go, do. Fear produces inertia and faith produces dynamism. Fear is a red light and faith is a green light. Now remember that Jesus wants us to live by faith, not fear. He wants us to be dynamic, and that's what our life should look like. And so the constant challenge for us as a church is to keep overcoming our fears to follow Him. That's what a walk of faith looks like. Remember from the previous video that Peter had to get out of the safety of the boat to walk on the water and to get to Jesus. And it's the same for us. If we want Jesus, then we're going to have to get out of the boat and we're going to have to start taking risks and facing danger and overcoming our fears. There's no other option. It is the only way forward. So if you feel bored or restless or frustrated in your walk with God right now, then the likelihood is that you've actually balked at a jump somewhere. In fact, think about this. Is there something that Jesus has asked you to do that you've said no to because you were too afraid to say yes? Maybe you thought it was too risky or scary or didn't think that you were up to the task. What is the one thing that He's asking you to do that you think you can't do? Whatever just popped into your mind right now, that's the exact thing you probably should do, no matter how big or small it sounds. What jump has God laid in front of you right now? Maybe He's telling you it's time to quit your job to go into ministry, but you're scared to make that leap, so you haven't done it yet. Maybe there's someone you need to apologize to or forgive, but you're scared to pick up the phone in case they reject you, so you haven't done it yet. Maybe God's telling you to give away some money, but you're scared you won't have enough left over, so you haven't done it yet. Maybe He's saying you need to get rid of something in your life that dishonors Him, but you're too scared to be without it, or you're scared of the shame of confessing a sin. Whatever he's talking to you about right now individually will be unique to your own walk. So your challenge will be to overcome your own fears to take that leap. And if you don't, you're going to experience this spiritual inertia, restlessness, and frustration. And you can probably hear God's voice right now saying, take that leap and do that deed. But even if you can't think of anything on a personal level, I think we also have to remember that Jesus actually gave the collective church universal commands through the Bible that none of us are exempt from. Jesus gave us all the Great Commission to go out and preach the gospel, heal the sick, and cast out demons. Jesus told us all to be a visible city on a hill, salt and light in our community. He said that we must all take up our cross and put away our selfish ambition if we're to follow him. He said that we should all be known by our love for each other. So the question is, are we actually doing those things? Are we telling people about Jesus? Are we going out into the community to be salt and light? Are we loving each other? Are we living lives that don't actually make sense to the people around us because we're no longer living as they do, no longer motivated by worldly wealth, fame, and success, but instead living self-sacrificial, counter-cultural lives for the kingdom? And if we're not doing those things, is it possible that fear is holding us back? See, I think this is the problem for much of the church today. Collectively, we are often living by fear, not by faith. And so we're not doing the things that Jesus asked us to do. We have been hit by this inertia. Me and my cousin found comfort in conferencing about jumping because it meant that we didn't actually have to jump. And in church we find comfort in talking about what Jesus asked us to do because it means that we don't actually have to go and do it. So we go to endless services and talk about the Great Commission instead of actually going out to fulfill it. We spend hours arguing with each other about theological minutiae instead of being obedient to the plain truth that isn't in dispute. We go to endless Bible studies in our homes but don't actually apply anything that we're learning in the real world. We sing all of these songs about how sold out we are for Jesus on Sunday, but then the action isn't there to back it up during the week. Why? At the root of inaction is normally fear. Maybe we fear persecution, hatred, and mockery, and losing our status in the eyes of men. Maybe we fear rejection if we go public for Jesus. Any leap of faith will have a fear attached that tries to stop you from doing it. But any church that actually gives in to these fears is going to suffer inertia and then become restless and bored and frustrated. And furthermore, that's not the church that Jesus initiated. Jesus initiated a dynamic church that would live by faith, not fear. He sent out a church that would live risky, scary, and exciting lives because they were taking leaps into the unknown to follow him. And that's still our remit today. We still have that same work to do. The only question is, have we actually got the courage to do it? Because courage is what it's going to take. We need courage to convert our talking into action. We need courage to stop conferencing endlessly and to start actually jumping. We need courage to be dynamic, adventurous, daring, and all of those other things that we were always meant to be. The principle for this video then, a bit like the previous one, is just to keep jumping. Keep on jumping. It's okay to be afraid as we step out in faith. That is completely natural. It's okay to admit that you're afraid. That's okay too. But don't ever let the fear win. Don't let fear cause stagnant inertia in your own life or in your group. That's where much of the church's problems today stem from, and as a Fuel Project network group, we're trying to show the church a better way. So it's your mission, if you choose to accept it, to be bold and courageous and to take leap after leap after leap. If you're not currently doing something scary for Christ, individually or with your group, then you're not doing it right. Embrace the adventure, take these risks, keep saying yes to Jesus, keep jumping, and let's see where he leads us. And remember that once we actually jumped into that pool, we actually loved it. And you will love living like this too. Just push through the fear barriers.